Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning for a great webinar that we have in store for you about the certifications through the state of Delaware and the Delaware District Office of the Small Business Administration. We're going to take a few more minutes to let some more people just kind of get on here before we get started. Jennifer, it's a couple of minutes after. Do you want to get started or do you want to
Sure.
wait for any more participants? Okay, we can get started.
Okay.
So again, thank you for everyone for joining us today for a webinar about introduction to state of Delaware and federal government contracting certification programs. I'm going to next slide. Just to give you, I don't think that's the slide we're looking for. This is just an overview of what we were going to discuss. Jennifer, you want to take it away?
Sure. So thank you for joining us. I'm Jennifer Pilcher with the Small Business Administration's Delaware office. We have an office in Wilmington, but we cover the entire state. So happy to connect with all of you today. We are here to talk about state and federal government certification programs. So for my part, you can see on the side of the screen reading SBA certifications. We have certifications that are done by self-certification, meaning that there is no formal application process for these through SBA. The first step to doing business with the federal government is creating a profile on a website called sam.gov. That's sam.gov. Now, when you create that profile, you will have the opportunity to select the option that you would like to be self-certified, that you believe that you meet all of the eligibility requirements for our small disadvantaged business program, our veteran-owned business program, our service disabled veteran-owned business program. And also I should have a designation in there for woman-owned business. All of these are self-certification. You just indicate that you fit the eligibility requirements in your SAM.gov profile, and you will be able to take advantage of those certifications, both where large prime contractors are looking for subcontractors to do business with the federal government, and agency buyers directly will be able to see that you do have these self-certifications. Then we're going to be talking to you today more formally about the formal certification programs. These are the ones where an application is required to be completed with SBA, and you have to be approved by SBA to obtain these certifications. The 8A Business Development Program, the Hub Zone Program, the Woman-Owned Small Business Program. And I do want to mention there are some changes coming. SBA will be administering the Veteran-Owned Business Program and the Small Disadvantaged Business Program starting in January of 2023. So we expect that there will be some changes around the certification process when that comes into play, and we will keep you posted on those as they come into place. Siobhan?
Good morning again. I'm Siobhan White, the Director of the Office of Supplier Diversity, and I will be speaking to you about our state certifications. Both of our certifications are formal certifications, which means you do have to apply. We have the Diverse Business Certification, which has 5 designations. So minority, women, veteran, service-disabled veterans, and individual with a disability. We also have a second certification, which is our small business focused certification. It's race and gender neutral. So it's solely based on the size of your business. And in my presentation today, I'll go through a little bit more about the eligibility requirements for these certifications and how these are used to help you, that will benefit you in formal procurements with the state of Delaware.
All right, so we are going to provide for you these slides, so you'll have links and all of the information for the contacts and the resources that we're going to set out for you throughout. But we did want to be sure that we include some key resources for you here today. Of course, Siobhan White at the state of Delaware. And on the federal side, we've included information on the Procurement and Technical Advisory Center, the PTAC. The PTAC is funded by the Department of Defense to help businesses do business with the federal government, as well as local and municipal governments. So you can use the link provided here, www.aptac-us.org, if you're not located in Delaware. If you are located in Delaware, our PTAC is Dr. Walt Blaney in Newark. He is happy to help you sort through the world of federal government contracting and find your place in it. The PTAC's services are completely free of charge. So that is a big deal. They can be a huge resource to businesses looking to do business with the federal government. Now, one of the PTAC services is that they'll help you identify your business's competencies and then help you to identify which federal agencies buy what you are selling and when. Now, once you have a working relationship with the PTAC in that way, the PTAC can set up an email to your inbox every night detailing upcoming procurement announcements relative to your specific capabilities. So, we advocate strongly that above and beyond obtaining federal government contract certifications, that if you're looking to do business with the federal government, you engage in self-marketing. You connect with those agencies that are buying what you're selling. You introduce yourself and your competencies, and secondarily, any certifications that you have. And Dr. Walt Blaney and the PTAC will be able to help you to identify from the vast world of federal agencies which agencies are the most likely to buy what you are selling. And therefore, maybe you want to devote more of that self-marketing effort towards those agencies just to maximize your time. Sean? All right, so I also wanted to include a link to sba.gov/updates. If you are interested in information from SBA's Delaware office, from any SBA office in the country, including SBA headquarters in Washington, D.C., I encourage you to sign up for these updates. You'll receive information on what the agency is working on webinars and classes just like this one. So it's a great resource and I highly recommend you take advantage of it. Next slide.
The Office of Supplier Diversity, we also have a mailing list. We send out a lot of information, business networking events, workshops, trainings that are available through the state and also through our local and regional business partners. We also have a link to the Delaware Division of Small Business event calendar, which is a very useful tool to let you know what's going on, in the business world. So we suggest that you go to the website, subscribe, and to get the information.
All right. So, I know that you're here today because you are aware that the federal government is a great customer. But a lot of folks aren't aware that the federal government is the largest buyer of goods and services in the world, bar none. Annually, the federal government spends more than $600 billion, that's billion with a B, on purchases. And 23% of federal government dollars spent stateside are actually goaled by Congress to be spent with small business prime contractors. Now, Congress also goals the federal government to spend specific percentages of money that it spends stateside with specific types of businesses. Now, 5% are goaled to be spent with women-owned small businesses. 12% are goaled by executive order to be spent with small disadvantaged businesses. Now, that includes 8A firms. 3% are goaled to be purchased from small disadvantaged veteran-owned small businesses. And 3% are goaled to be spent with hub zone firms. Now, these goals are for prime contracting opportunities where small businesses sell directly to the federal government. Now, the balance of the 23% of federal government contracting dollars spent stateside that's targeted to small business is just targeted at the broader small business community, which of course includes businesses that fall into these specified small business categories. Now, in addition to purchases from small business prime contractors, whenever the federal government awards a contract to a large business with a value of over $750,000 or $1.5 million for construction contracts, the federal government requires that that large business submit to the federal government a subcontracting plan that includes exactly how opportunities will be made available on that contract to small businesses, women-owned small businesses, hub zone small businesses, and service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. That is a great amount of opportunity, both in the prime and subcontracting arena. What we see is some businesses are interested in pursuing prime contracts. Some are interested in pursuing subcontracts and some pursue a mix. And I do want to mention the idea that when small businesses first look at engaging with the federal government and selling to the federal government, they can sometimes be intimidated by the size of these contracts. And, would I even be competitive on these contracts? And, what we talk to folks about is that the federal government is definitely wanting to protect the taxpayer dollar when it is making purchases. And often it wants to see a successful track record of completion of work on federal government contracts before it would feel comfortable awarding a prime contract to a small business. That's, a broad brush statement, but can be true. And then what we see for small businesses is that when they are pursuing subcontracts, they can create that track record for themselves through those subcontracts. And the completion of work successfully on those subcontracts makes them more competitive for more subcontracts, for prime contracts with the federal government, and just in the general marketplace. So just some thoughts for you as we get started here. Next slide. All right, so as I mentioned, the federal government is goaled by Congress to spend specific amounts of the dollars that it spends stateside with businesses that have the certifications that we're going to be talking about here today. And of course, we have set forth on this slide the subcontracting opportunities here. That is a huge opportunity for small business. Next slide. All right, so this slide represents the federal government's report card on meeting Congress's small business federal contracting small business spending goals. And it breaks down how much was spent with small businesses of each SBA certification type over the last 5 fiscal years. And the takeaway here is that the federal government is spending very large amounts of money with small business and small businesses with the SBA certifications that we're here to talk about today. Next slide.
So I'm going to go into the Office of Supplier Diversity's certification. We are a unit within the Delaware Division of Small Business, and our mission is to enhance economic opportunities for diverse business enterprises and small business enterprises, and to help them compete for state contracts. Like I said, we have 2 different types of certification. So the diverse business certification, that's based on who owns the business. And our small business focus certification is race and gender neutral. So it's based solely on the size of the business. So unlike the federal government, state government, we do not have any current set asides or goals for our diverse business contracting and our small business contracting, but we do have a vendor day training where we are transparent about the Delaware's procurement process. It is a half-day training which is held by our contracting unit at least 4 times a year, where we just go over any and everything procurement. That way, you're set up to understand how the state of Delaware does contracting, how the state does business, and how you can market yourself to get on state contract. There is a lot of talk about the under threshold spend, the over threshold spend. We teach you how to look at current contracts and how to position yourself, how to develop your proposals to either meet or beat the vendors that are already been awarded contract. There is a procurement contact list for all of our state agencies and our local municipalities of the contact of the individuals who actually either do the purchasing or work closely with the buyers in those agencies. And this is a snapshot of the My Marketplace website, which is the Delaware's procurement portal. Any and everything about our procurement is on this site. There's really nothing that is not there. It is really a wealth of information. So I do encourage you, if you have not already taken a vendor day training, please do so. And if you have, always come back. There's always new information. There's always some updates. It's a lot of information. So there may be some things that you may have missed the first time. This is our current spend range chart for the state. We do go into depth about this chart in our vendor day training. And this kind of tells you in terms of where you are in your capacity in your business, where you would fall in line in state contracting. And what's very useful about this chart, depending on the range, there are opportunities for and benefits for you if you are certified through the Office of Supplier Diversity. So looking at this chart, spend range 1, we can see this is all open market purchases. And so agencies are able to use any vendor of their choosing for products and services in this spend range. And so, like I said before, on the My Marketplace website, there is a contact list of all of the purchasing agents in the state agencies. You can reach out directly to them and market your product and market your service. For spend range 2, we see that 3 written quotes are required. One of those quotes has to come from a vendor certified through the Office of Supplier Diversity. So there's the benefit to you there. And then spend range 3, which is our over threshold, which requires a formal procurement where an RFP is required. Most agencies will have it written in their scoring that if you are registered or certified with the Office of Supplier Diversity, you will receive additional points in your scoring. So there's a benefit to certification when we're looking at our procurements. So the key benefit is you are listed on our directory of certified businesses. This is a public directory. It is used by all 16 of our state agencies and municipalities. It's also used by some of our larger corporations or private corporations in the state. Christiana Care, Corteva, they make use of the directory. So like when I said before, if the state agency needs to get those 3 written quotes to satisfy that spend range 2, this is what they use, a directory, to find a vendor to give them a quote for that product or service. One thing I will say about our certification, you have to think about it as a marketing tool, because that's exactly what it is. And you have to use it to your advantage when you're seeking state contracts. So I'll go in a little bit of depth of how the use of the directory can be a good marketing tool for your business. And some of the key things that you really want to ensure that you include in your application so that you appear on a directory is listing your website. I can't stress enough about having a website. And I deal with a lot of businesses who are in development stage and they don't have one, but it is a good investment because it really showcases your product and your services. The link is listed in your directory and it can take a potential buyer directly to your site. We do use NAICS codes. NAICS codes are the North American Industry Classification System codes that is used by the federal government agencies to classify businesses. And our search function works with NAICS codes like it works with Word. So particularly in the construction industry, we find that a lot of prime contractors, instead of entering a word in the search box, they will enter in a NAICS code for the specific service that the subcontractor provides to search for a vendor. And then lastly, the description. You want to be clear and concise in your description, mostly because we do have a character limit. But we also want to use keywords and think of, if you're searching for a business, a product or service, what are some of the keywords that you would use to search? You want to make sure you highlight any and everything that applies to your business so that your entry can appear on the search. So I'll go into the eligibility of a certified business. So here, in order to be certified as a diverse business enterprise, you must be a for-profit business that is 51% or more owned and controlled by individual or individuals within one or more of these categories. And I want to touch on the control element because that is an important element of certification. You just can't own the business. You have to control the business. You have to have the knowledge, the expertise, and actively manage the business. If you are in an industry that requires licensing, electrician, nursing, pharmacy, the owner or owners seeking certification are required to hold that licensing. And we also have the state of Delaware Certified Diverse Business Seal. Like I stated before, Certification is a marketing tool, so this can help you be, instantly recognized as a certified diverse business with the state of Delaware. We also have the small business focus certification. Again, this is race and gender neutral. It's solely based on the size of your business. And here you can see what the eligibility thresholds are. These numbers are 50% of what the Small Business Administration numbers are. So sometimes you will see businesses of a unique size. Essentially, what that means is the Small Business Administration have their set limits of what's determined as a small business. For Delaware standards, we go lower than that. So we're 50% of what their thresholds are. And how we determine this is we use the last 3 years of your tax returns, take the average to make sure that you fall within the eligibility guidelines. And again, we do have a seal for our certified small businesses that you can use for your marketing materials. So I'm going to touch a little bit on our application process because it is a formal application process. I get a lot of, the word I'm going to use is feedback about our application. It is a 24-page document, but the actual application is only 10 pages. The first 14 pages are pages of information that is very helpful to you. Our eligibility requirements, policies, procedures. There are some frequently asked questions that are useful to you, but the most useful page is page 12, which is our checklist. I do get a lot of applications that are, they just fill it out and send it in. Well, we do require supporting documentation to verify your statuses and determine your eligibility. And so this is a snapshot of what we require from our businesses. And I do also want to take the opportunity to differentiate in-state business and an out-of-state business, because we do have certification for businesses who are not located in Delaware, but because we are such a corporate-friendly state, it's one of the best states to do business in. Just because you're incorporated here does not mean you are an in-state business. For purposes of certification, an in-state business means you are physically located in the state and running a majority of your operations out of the state. So there's a big difference. So you can see that Delaware businesses, all the supporting documents that are required if you're in state. Again, your governance documents are according to how your entity is set up. We do verify if you're in a licensed professional, we need a copy of your license. For Native American designation, we do require a tribal card. And for the SBF certification, that small business certification, we do require tax documents. I do want to say that if you don't have 3 years of tax documents, if you're a new business, you are still eligible to apply for that certification. For our out-of-state businesses, we do require that you are certified either in your home state or through the National Certifying Organization. So for minority-owned businesses, that would be NMSDC, the National Minority Supplier Development Council. And for the women-owned businesses, it would be through WeBank, the Women Business Enterprise National Council. So I think that concludes information about the state of Delaware's certification process. If you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A, and I will turn it over to Jennifer to talk about the SBA certification programs.
All right, thanks, Siobhan. So we do have quite a few programs to talk about today. Let's jump right in. Next slide. All right, so as we discussed initially, SBA's federal government contracting certifications are divided into 2 categories: self-certifications. I've listed those on the screen here: small business, veteran-owned business. service disabled, veteran-owned business. Now, as we'll talk about later in the presentation, that program is about to move over into SBA administrative control. So we are going to see, I expect, some changes around the certification process of service disabled, veteran-owned, and veteran-owned. Historically, what it's been, though, is it's been a self-certification, and then if we're talking about a disability, confirmation from VA on that. And also service small disadvantaged businesses. Those are self-certifications. Again, the first step to doing business with the federal government is setting up a profile on a website called sam.gov, sam.gov, and you will have the opportunity to self-certify these categories along with woman-owned business when you set up your SAM profile. And then we're going to talk in more detail today about the formal certification programs with SBA. These are the certification programs that require a formal application to SBA and that SBA approve you as certified in the program. Now, those include the 8A Business Development Program, the Hub Zone Program, and the woman-owned / economically disadvantaged women-owned small business program. All of these are formal certification programs. Next slide. All right, so with all of our programs, we do require that you are a small business by SBA size standards. And as Siobhan mentioned, that's going to be different than the size standards that Delaware has in place for small business. So let me kind of break this down a little bit. According to the SBA, a small business concern is a business that is independently owned and operated, and which is not dominant in its field of operation and in conformity with specific industry criteria. So depending on your business's NAICS code, a small business is defined either in terms of the average number of employees over the past 12 months or the average annual receipts over the past 3 years. Also, to be defined as small by SBA size standards, a business must be organized for profit, have a place of business in the US, operate primarily within the US, or make a significant contribution to the US economy through payment of taxes or use of American products, materials, or labor, and be independently owned and operated. So I do want to let you know about a website, sba.gov/size. It's here on the slide. At this website, you will see a tool, Measure My Business, and you will be able to, by entry of keyword, determine your NAICS code and whether your business qualifies as small by SBA size standards. This is a really user-friendly tool. When you go to the website, scroll down a bit. There's a lot of information about SBA size standards on this website. Scroll down a bit on your screen and you'll see the tool, Measure My Business. Click into it, use a keyword, and determine right then and there whether or not your business is considered to be small by SBA size standards. I do find that by and large, the folks that are joining us on these webinars do not have an issue around size with regard to qualification for these certification programs. Any questions around size? Okay. All right. Susan, will you let me know if you see any questions around size or any particularly for me, and then I'll stop and address them?
Yeah, we did have one that came up earlier that was asking if you could define a small business. But I don't know, I don't know if you and Siobhan would consider that answered between the information you guys both gave.
Yeah, for my part, the sba.gov/size website, that Measure My Business tool, quick and easy way to hop in and determine whether or not your business is small. And of course, the slide that we just passed really lays out the details around that. All right. Competitive advantages of SBA federal government contracting certifications. A benefit to certification under all of the programs I'm going to talk to you about today is the competitive edge that certification provides when federal government contracts are put out using two specific kinds of contracting vehicles. First, we have set-aside contracts, where contracts are set aside for competition only among firms with specified certifications. And we also have sole source contracts, where contracts are awarded after negotiation with one firm with a specific certification or certifications after the government and that firm come to terms on the contract through one-on-one negotiation. Now, because these benefits apply to all the federal government contracting certifications we'll talk about today, I'm going to explain set-aside and sole source in a little more detail on the next couple of slides. But I also want to point out that applicable only to hub zone certification is the price evaluation preference. In a full and open competition bidding scenario, where a large business is the lowest bidder, a contracting officer can apply what we call PEP, the price evaluation preference, to provide hub zone certified firms with a competitive advantage. Now, when PEP is applied, the bids are viewed through a lens of all non-hub zone bidders having 10% added to their bid amount. Then, if the hub zone bidder's bid is the low bid, once that PEP is applied, the hub zone firm can be awarded that contract. Now, additionally, as I mentioned earlier, large firms awarded contracts valued at $750,000 or more, $1.5 million for construction contracts, have to provide the federal government a subcontracting plan detailing how they'll use small businesses, including small businesses with the SBA contracting certifications we're talking about today, to complete work on that contract. So those large businesses actively search for firms with those certifications and provide those firms with work under those large contracts. Subcontracting is a great way for small businesses that haven't established a track record of successful federal government contracting to establish that track record and put themselves in a position to win more subcontracts and prime contracts as they move forward. Next slide. All right, set aside. When a buying federal agency sets out to purchase a good or a service, its contracting officer does market research to determine if at least two firms are capable of performing the contract and want to bid on it. Contracts worth $10,000 to $250,000 are automatically and exclusively set aside for small business. For contracts worth $250,000 or more, contracts should be set aside if there are two or more small businesses that could do the work. Now, for non-construction contracts worth $750,000 or more, $1.5 million for construction contracts, we do have that subcontracting plan coming into play, where they're required to submit that plan showing how small businesses are going to be used to complete the work on the contract. All right, sole source. Next slide. A contracting officer does market research to determine whether there are small businesses and small businesses in specific certification categories that are ready, willing, and able to bid on and complete work on a contract. Now, if there's only one firm to bid on a contract, the contracting officer can enter into negotiations with just that one firm. Now, if the contracting officer and the firm come to terms on all the contracting terms, so price, delivery, those types of things, the contract can be awarded to that firm as a sole source contract. So that's a really big advantage for small businesses here. Any questions around those contracting vehicles and those advantages before I start to get into the specific certification programs? Do you see anything, Susan? Just want to give folks a minute.
We did have another size question come through.
Okay.
It's a size question. SBA size definition is different from Delaware, correct? And they were speaking about gross revenue maximums.
Yes, the size
Okay.
standards are different on the state level and the federal level. The federal level looks at businesses according to their NAICS code, and it will decide whether or not they're small based on, for certain NAICS codes, the number of employees they have, and for another set of NAICS codes, revenue. So the quickest and easiest way to determine whether your business is small is to just hop onto sba.gov/size and use that Measure My Business tool. It's quick, easy, pop in keywords, and you'll have that determination right there.
And for the state of Delaware, our thresholds are 50% of what the SBA. We use if you go, we'll have the slides to you guys afterwards, but that chart that I showed you, it's segmented by your industry. So there are 4 different types of industry, and you follow the chart to see where you fall in terms of your thresholds for your full-time equivalents, which are your full-time employees, and your gross sales.
Okay, there were a few more questions, Jennifer and Siobhan. I'm not sure if they're
Sure.
applicable right now, but there was one that said, speaking of equity, where are the stats on how many contracts have gone to or allotted to Hispanic or African American or women-owned businesses in particular?
For the state of Delaware, our stats are released in the yearly report. So if you go to the OSD website, at the bottom, you click News and Reports. We submit the state of Delaware's scorecard for spending with the diverse businesses on a yearly basis. And you can always track it through our open data portal, which is the state's transparency portal. It's data.delaware.gov to see how the state's performing with particular minority owned businesses. And you can always contact me as well. I'll give you the numbers. I can pull them from the Office of Management and Budget just to see where Delaware falls with our vendors.
And from the federal perspective, a few slides back, I provided what I called a scorecard that shows you how much money was spent last year with the different types of certified businesses, with the certifications we're talking about today. And then if you'd like more detail, you can email me at jennifer.pilcher@sba.gov, and I can send that information right on to you.
And for the size question, again, here's the chart that I was referring to, how we determine our small business eligibility for the state of Delaware.
Thank you both. And then just 2 more questions, I think. How do we determine, or how do they determine if the designation for a woman-owned small business has gone through with sam.gov? Like, how do they know that that's been determined or not?
The self-certification categories, woman-owned business, now that's different than this woman-owned small business program that I'm talking about, in the next few slides. Women-owned small business is by application to SBA. It's a formal application process. All of the self-certification categories are just your attestation that you believe that your firm meets the eligibility requirements in these categories. And then there is a database, the Dynamic Small Business Search database, DSBS, you sometimes hear it referred to, where that information from SAM, any of your certifications, whether self-certification or by SBA application, are listed. Your firm is listed with its certifications, and Dynamic Small Business Search is searchable by these large contractors looking for subcontractors of certain types with certain certifications. They'll be able to quickly and easily see what you have, and also by contracting officers with the federal government who are looking for prime contractors who have certain certifications.
And then one last one, I think, before the next section. Someone asked for the certification process, is an operating agreement required?
Yes.
Oh,
For our certification, if you, if your entity is an LLC, we do require an operating agreement.
And for the federal applications for certification, some of them are a little bit different from others, but it can be a robust application process. And you will see, for example, for the women-owned small business, economically disadvantaged women-owned small business category, we have a website, beta.certify, CERTIFY.SBA.gov, that will list for you the documents that you need to complete your application. So you'll be able to go to that Beta Certify website, pull down the list of documents ahead of time, ahead of when you're sitting there looking to apply, and be able to pull together everything that you need to make that application process a little bit more smooth.
Okay, I think the other questions can be answered towards the end of the webinar. So thank you.
Okay, all right, so women-owned small business. The Women-Owned Small Business Certification Program is a tool to help provide a level playing field for women business owners. Through the program, the government limits competition for certain contracts to businesses certified through the program as women-owned small business. And these contracts are for specific industries where women-owned small businesses are underrepresented. Now, there are two categories of small business that qualify to participate in the program: women-owned small business and economically disadvantaged women-owned small business. Contracting opportunities through the Women-Owned Small Business Program will be solicited specifically for women-owned small business or economically disadvantaged women-owned small business certified firms. Now, today we're going to talk about eligibility requirements for the women-owned small business and the economically disadvantaged women-owned small business certification tracks separately. If you can qualify as economically disadvantaged women-owned small business versus women-owned small business, you'll want to qualify as EDWOSB, because EDWOSB firms can compete for contracts put out for both EDWOSB and WOSB. But WOSB firms, however, can only use their certification to bid on contracts put out for WOSB firms. You know, when we're talking in terms of set-aside contracts, of course, having this certification does not limit your ability to compete in a full and open competition scenario. What I'm talking about is when there has been a set-aside, when the contracting officer has put a contract out for bid only for EDWOSB or WOSB, that's where the difference comes into play. That's where, if you can be designated economically disadvantaged, you'll want to be, because you can compete for both types of set-asides, whereas WOSB could only compete for WOSB. So let's talk about how you know whether you're eligible for either track, WOSB or EDWOSB. SBA uses NAICS codes, North American Industry Classification Codes, which classify businesses by their industry, to determine two things: whether a firm is eligible to participate in the WOSB program, and for which of the two program tracks, WOSB or EDWOSB, the firm is eligible. Essentially, the WOSB track is for industries where women-owned small businesses are substantially underrepresented, and the EDWOSB track is for industries where women-owned businesses are simply underrepresented. So to help you determine which industry, and so which of the two program tracks you qualify for, we will email you after this presentation a NAICS code list and NAICS code research guidance. And you can feel free to connect with me if you need assistance with this. When determining your NAICS code, look at both your primary and secondary capabilities to include all of your capabilities in your women-owned small business certification. So, for example, if a company is primarily a computer programming firm, but it also does computer maintenance and computer sales, computer maintenance and sales should be included in your WOSB certification as secondary capabilities. If any primary or secondary NAICS codes qualify for EDWOSB, apply for EDWOSB. All right, so I do want to go back one slide. That was just a giant introduction to the program, just to give folks a context for what we're talking about here and the reasoning behind why I'm going to have two slides. The first one, the one we've landed on here, talking about eligibility requirements for women-owned small businesses. The next slide is going to talk about requirements to be certified as economically disadvantaged women-owned small business. So, to be eligible for the Women-Owned Small Business Program, your business must be owned and controlled by at least 51% by one or more women who are U.S. citizens, and that woman or those women must manage daily operations. So what does that mean? Control is demonstrated by the highest role in the business, typically the CEO, being held by a woman who's a U.S. citizen. That woman should work full-time in that business during typical office hours, basically 9 to 5. And that woman's managerial experience has to be demonstrated. So how do you do that? You'll provide a resume with managerial experience within the business's industry as part of your application. Now, that woman should demonstrate that she makes long-term decisions for the business. All right, and as we discussed earlier, your business does have to be a small business within NAICS codes approved for the WOSB program. Any questions around WOSB eligibility before I move on to talk about the EDWOSB track?
Yes, there was at least one.
Okay.
If a WOSB firm has a full-time staff member that is economically disadvantaged, can they qualify to bid for EDWOSB?
No, what we'll see when we move over to the EDWOSB slide next is that we're looking for the woman or women who own the business to qualify as EDWOSB.
Thank you. And I think for right now, I think all the questions for right now are good till the end.
All right, next slide. All right, so we do have those two tracks, WOSB and EDWOSB, and this slide again is for the EDWOSB track. So in addition to all the women-owned small business requirements we covered earlier, EDWOSBs have to meet the requirements detailed on this slide. EDWOSB certification provides more contracting opportunity than WOSB certification. To qualify as an EDWOSB, you must demonstrate economic disadvantage. So how do you do that? The applicant's personal net worth, now that's assets minus liabilities, must be less than $750,000, excluding ownership in business and primary personal residence, income reinvested or used to pay taxes of your business, and funds reinvested in IRAs or other retirement accounts. Also, adjusted gross income averaged over 3 years has to be $350,000 or less. And fair market value of all of the applicant's assets must be $6 million or less. So I do want to stop again and see if we have any questions around EDWOSB eligibility.
No, it looks like we're good.
Okay. All right. Next slide. So self-certified firms, regardless of which of the two WOSB tracks you are on, you do have to be certified through that beta.certified.sba.gov website or one of the SBA approved third-party certifiers. And we'll talk about those entities on the next slide. If you were previously self-certified, you must recertify through beta.certified.sba.gov or one of SBA's approved third-party certifier organizations. Next slide. So whether you choose to complete the WOSB, EDWOSB application yourself at beta.certified.sba.gov, or you apply with the help of a third-party certifier, is a business decision for you to make. This slide identifies organizations designated by SBA as third-party certifiers. Those are the El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the National Women Business Owners Corporation, the U.S. Women's Chamber of Commerce, and the Women's Business Enterprise National Council. The cost to certify through a third party is the cost of being part of that organization. You're paying for the full benefits of being part of that organization. And then these organizations can also certify you for the two WOSB tracks. So also I do want to note, there may be a processing fee when certifying through the non-chamber third-party certifiers. And another note, if you're currently working on a contract and you're self-certified, your self-certification stands until that contract concludes, and then you have to recertify through Beta Certify or one of these third-party certifying organizations. Next slide. So that concludes our overview of the women-owned small business and economically disadvantaged women-owned small business certifications. Anybody have any questions around that one before I move on to tell you about 8A?
No.
No, all right.
It doesn't look like we have any.
Okay, all right. So we did talk about the women-owned small business certification program. Let's look at the 8A program. Like the women-owned small business economically disadvantaged women-owned small business certification, 8A requires a formal application to SBA. So here's an example to show you how the 8A program helps 8A firms grow. If you're a startup firm and you see that the contracts being put out for bid by the federal government are too large for you to handle, you can still be successful in federal government contracting through the 8A program, because the 8A program helps you to hire people, attract higher tier subcontractors to do the job, obtain financing, and it gives you experience. How the 8A program does that is by removing contracts from the competitive arena and allowing 8A firms to do all of those things, to build relationships as they develop and win contracts through the 8A program. So now that an 8A firm would have experience on these 8A contracts, that firm can compete on similar contracts in the competitive environment. And that is the ultimate objective of the 8A program. You'll be independently competitive. All right, so this slide, you have to click on it to kind of display, yeah, there we go. All right, so who's eligible for 8A certification? First and foremost, to be eligible for 8A certification, the individual or individuals upon whom the firm's 8A eligibility is based must be established by a more likely than not evidentiary standard that they're socially disadvantaged. For the 8A program's purposes, socially disadvantaged individuals are people who face discrimination in educational or business settings. So only when social disadvantage has been established can we move on to the next point of eligibility. So if you click on the slide again, it should, yeah, there we go. Economic disadvantage. The individual or individuals upon whom 8A eligibility is based must have an adjusted net worth below $750,000. Practically speaking, the economic disadvantage calculation for 8A eligibility is the same one that we went over for EDWOSB. Economic disadvantage means that the individual or individuals has adjusted gross income less than $350,000 and total assets less than $6 million. Once social and economic disadvantage are established, the 8A applicant must establish that the individuals upon whom 8A certification is to be based actually own the firm. Ownership is defined as at least 51% owned by disadvantaged, now that's both social and economic disadvantage, by disadvantaged individuals. Next, the 8A application must establish that the firm actually controls and manages, or that the people upon whom 8A certification is based actually control and manage the firm. The firm has to be unconditionally controlled by disadvantaged individuals. Next, the 8A applicant must prove that it meets SBA size standards for the 8A program. The applicant firm must be a small business according to the firm's primary NAICS code. So after these slides, I'm going to talk to you, well, I guess I already talked to you about sba.gov/size, the website that gives you that quick and easy keyword tool to determine right away if your business is small. And I do want to flag you to another website, census.gov/NAICS, census.gov/NAICS. That website lets you find your NAICS code using a keyword search. So once you've met the disadvantage, ownership, management and control, and size 8A eligibility requirements, you have to establish what we call potential for success according to 8A program standards. Typically, SBA looks for the applicant firm to have been in business for at least 2 years when it applies for 8A certification. And finally, the 8A applicant has to meet the 8A program's good character standard. The disadvantaged individuals upon whom 8A certification is to be based must not have a lack of business integrity, which would be demonstrated through serious violations of the law or other government regulations. Now, the links at the bottom of this slide are references to where details of these eligibility requirements are found in federal regulations. Any questions around 8A eligibility?
No, I think we're good.
All right, so let's move on. Next slide. Okay, you have to click on the slide, there we go. So what happens when you get into the 8A program? Keep in mind that the 8A certification is limited to a 9-year period. The first 4 years in the program are the developmental stage. You qualify for everything 8A offers in this stage. The 8A program offers contracting opportunities, but additionally, it provides financial and management and technical assistance to make 8A firms independently competitive, which remember is the whole point of the 8A program. You might be reluctant to compete on a huge federal contract because you don't think your firm has the ability to win and or complete work on that contract. And that's where the 8A program's financial and management and technical assistance comes in to support you, to help you gear up to win and complete work on those federal contracts that seem otherwise out of reach, and to help you grow. So early in the 8A program's existence, SBA found that firms were relying on 8A contracts, and it didn't develop commercially to be able to survive and thrive commercially. So if a contract is valued at $4.5 million or below, for construction contracts, it's $7.5 million or below, a contract can be issued as sole source within the 8A program, meaning that the government deals with only one firm, the 8A firm, to negotiate and award that contract. And sole source contracting is a great way to build broad growth, but those opportunities have to be balanced with commercial contracts in order for 8A firms to thrive commercially after their 8A graduation. So if you click on the slide again, we'll see that last part of the 9-year period kind of come to life there. The last 5 years of the 9-year program is called the transitional stage. In the earlier version of the 8A program, 8A firms would come in with a couple $100,000 in revenue and they leave with millions in revenue. With access to 8A sole source contracts being easy, Those firms didn't have the motivation to go out and win contracts independent of the 8A sole source opportunities. But many of those firms went out of business. Congress didn't want 8A firms excessively reliant on 8A contracts. Congress wanted those firms to develop their commercial side too. So the transitional stage developed, and here's how it breaks down year by year. Year 5 in the program, 15% of an 8A firm's contracts should be commercial or just not 8A dependent contracts. By year 6, we move that up to 25%, year 7, 30%, year 8, 40%, year 9, 50% of your contracts should be commercial contracts or not 8A certification dependent. If an 8A firm is found to be not to be trying to meet those objectives, the 8A program can restrict its access to sole source contracts. All right. Next slide. So the takeaway from this slide, and you can just kind of click it a couple of times. There we go. The takeaway from this slide is that the 8A program offers a lot of assistance. Training by 8A resource partners in all areas of business, general training sessions given in the SBA Entrepreneur Center, information on SBA loans and other programs. When you are admitted into the 8A program, you'll be assigned an SBA employee, a business opportunity specialist, whose job it is to guide you through the most beneficial use of the program for your firm. And that business opportunity specialist is intimately familiar with SBA loan programs, other programs that can help you succeed. We had one firm here in Delaware. It was a small civil engineering firm, came into the 8A program, a few $100,000 in annual revenue, and they secured a huge federal government contract using their SBA certification. And at that point, of course, they were really excited by that opportunity, but they were also thinking, how can we make this work? How can we finance this? Given the fact that prior to our admission to the program, we're just a few $100,000 a year in annual revenue. That's where their business opportunity specialist came into play. The business opportunity specialist was intimately familiar with the SBA loan programs and was able to help them to use those loan programs to finance the machinery and equipment that they needed to complete work on that contract. Also, we have the 8A Business Development Showcase and other marketing assistance. Your business opportunity specialist will help you to identify the agencies that are most actively buying what you're selling, to market to those agencies, and flag you to opportunities to market yourself to those agencies. I do want to talk to you a minute too about the SBA's Mentor Protege program. The 8A program is primarily a business development program. Participants can team up with a mentor who can provide further business development opportunities. For example, the mentor can have security clearance necessary to win a particular contract, and the protege firm doesn't. The mentor firm could sponsor the protege firm to secure security clearances faster than that firm could do on its own. So maybe the mentor has more sophisticated accounting systems than the protege. The mentor firm can help the protege firm bring its accounting system up to that level. Now, it used to be that this mentor protege program was limited to 8A firm participation. Now it's called the All Small Mentor Protege program. And it is not limited to 8A firms, but it's a really good tool for 8A firms to be aware of when they're looking to use their time in the program to help them to grow. And also, assistance in identifying government procurement agencies and their procurement forecasts, and introduction to search letters and follow up on specific requirements identified. The business opportunity specialist is really going to guide you through, again, using the 8A program to your best advantage. When you are admitted into the program, you'll submit a growth plan to the business opportunity specialist, talking about where your business is and where you want it to be. And then the business opportunity specialist will help you plug into 8A opportunities to help you get there. So big value around the program. Probably the best known benefit of the 8A certification, though, is subcontracts with the federal government. On these 8A contracts, SBA serves as the prime contractor and signs off on these opportunities for the 8A firms. Sole source contracts, as I mentioned, are possible at the 4.5 million, 7.5 million threshold. And above that threshold, contracts can be competed for bids only from 8A firms. Huge advantage. I do have noted here on the slide too, 7J management and technical assistance. These are primarily classes geared towards being successful in the federal government contracting arena. And also information on contracting opportunities with counties, airports, large government primes. Again, your business opportunity specialist is going to guide the way for you on that. Any questions around this?
We do have a couple questions. So I don't know if this question fits in. I'm not 100% sure, but it's been sitting here for a little bit. Do you help to make sure corporations are formed properly? Do you offer any sort of consultation meetings to make sure that they're following all of the rules?
So the SBA funds organizations that can help you with things like that. You might be familiar with some of the ones that we fund here in Delaware, if you're from Delaware. The organizations that I'm thinking of are termed resource partner organizations of the SBA. So those are SCORE, the Service Corps of Retired Executives. It's an all volunteer group of folks. SCORE started out in Delaware back in the 50s, DuPont retirees who had a wealth of understanding and wanting to give back in the area of small business formation and development. SCORE, the Small Business Development Centers here in Delaware, ours is operating out of the University of Delaware, and also the Women's Business Center. The Women's Business Center operates out of an organization called True Access Capital here in Delaware. And the Women's Business Center is not limited to just female clients. So I encourage anyone and everyone to take a look at the websites of these organizations. They offer classes, webinars, one-on-one counseling, which is great. I'm thinking you may want to reach out to SCORE of Delaware. You can just Google them, their contact information will come up, or you can reach out to me, jennifer.pilcher@sba.gov, and I can provide their contact information to you. Set up a meeting with them, and they will help you with your questions around business formation, business plans. That's an area that folks aren't aware that there's free help out there for, and they can kind of spin their wheels on their own for a little bit in that business planning stage. These organizations can help you with that. And their help is free of charge, which is a huge deal. And that's a resource that SBA provides that folks oftentimes aren't aware of. Now, sometimes if they're offering a class where there are materials involved, you might pay a nominal fee just to cover materials, but by and large, free of charge, wonderful resources. I absolutely recommend you reach out to them.
Thank you. The next one is, this one came through a little bit later. Is there any allowances given as far as the 2-year requirement for 8A?
The 2-year requirement for 8A is in place primarily, I touched on a little bit, the idea that, as you'd expect, the federal government is concerned with protecting the tax dollars that it's spending, making sure that it spends those tax dollars in the most judicious way. And often they're looking for a track record of performance. An example I use a lot of times is if you were having your kitchen done, you would really feel more comfortable working with a contractor who had renovated kitchens before. And so, in a broad brush way, the federal government is more comfortable spending money with businesses that have that track record. And the 2-year track record is something that's put in place for that reason. And also, with 8A, we talked about being a 9-year program. The 9-year program sounds like a long time, but what we find is it's important for businesses to really think about when they want to apply for the 8A program. Businesses that apply for the 8A program early on in their startup phase often find that they don't have the attention to devote to the program early enough in those 9 years. And then once they build up the business to the point where they're ready to really think about SBA and these contracting opportunities, some of those years have slipped through their fingers. So that's what the 2-year program is all about. There is some allowance around the 2-year application or the 2-year existence requirement. And if you email me at jennifer.pilcher@sba.gov and let me know, what your fact scenario is, we can talk it through. I just think it's important for folks to know that that's the reasoning behind it. And really, even if you've been in business for 2 years, and you meet that requirement on paper, you want to be sure that when you would get accepted into the program, you're ready to hit the ground running, because this program has huge advantages, but 9 years goes by quickly. So you want to make sure that you can take advantage of all 9 years of the program.
Thank you. And then just one more question and then a request to repeat something.
Okay.
The first question is there a mentorship program for the EDWOSB/WOSB programs?
The mentor protege program that I mentioned is open to all small businesses. So that is something that would be open to EDWOSB, WOSB.
Okay, perfect. And what you just said, someone was asking if you could repeat the information about the 8A mentoring that's also available to non-8A program participants.
Yes, that is the all small mentor protege program. Yes.
Perfect. I think as far as questions go, we're good.
Okay. All right, next slide then. All right, so let's talk about the Hub Zone program. The Hub Zone program is designed to help small businesses in designated areas that are low income, high unemployment, or both to gain access to federal procurement opportunities. Next slide. To be eligible for Hub Zone certification, a firm has to be small by relevant SBA size standards. Again, we have that website, sba.gov/size. That helps you determine by keyword search whether your firm meets those SBA size standards. Next, to be eligible for Hub Zone certification, a firm has to be owned and controlled by at least 51% by US citizens. And if you fall into one of these other listed categories, definitely reach out to me, we can discuss that. The Hub Zone applicant firm's principal office has to be located in a Hub Zone. And at least 35% of the Hub Zone applicant firm's employees must reside in a Hub Zone. Now, it's interesting. SBA's definition of an employee for this purpose is really lenient. An individual employed only 40 hours per month counts as an employee for these purposes. And an employee can live in any Hub Zone, not necessarily the Hub Zone where the employer is located. Next slide. So at any given time, there are about 5,000 Hub Zone certified firms total. Areas considered to be Hub Zones are areas of high unemployment and low income. In metropolitan areas, Hub Zones are designated census tract by census tract. So if one side of a street falls into one census tract and the other side of the street falls into a different census tract, addresses on one side of the street could be in a Hub Zone and addresses on the other side of the street might not be. In rural areas, Hub Zones are designated on a county by county basis. All the addresses in a county designated a Hub Zone would be considered to have Hub Zone certification eligible addresses. Indian reservations, military facilities closed by Base Realignment and Closure Act, and qualified disaster areas can also be designated as hub zone. So I'm going to direct you to another website, sba.gov/hubzone. And that website includes an easy to use map tool where you can just type in your address and right away you'll see on the map whether or not your address falls into a hub zone. That's sba.gov/hubzone. Now, as areas of average income and unemployment rates change, they can gain and lose hub zone status. And that's something that really comes into play when we talk about the fact that there really aren't a ton of hub zone firms out there. So if you can get your hub zone certification, you can really use that competitive edge of the set-asides and the sole source contracting opportunities and PEP, we're going to talk about that again in a minute, to your advantage because there aren't a lot of hub zones out there. So I do want to mention too, the hub zone map does change, as I said, as census reveals that unemployment and income levels have changed in an area, but the hub zone map is frozen through June 30th, 2023. So no changes are going to be made to hub zone eligibility through that date. Next slide. So you should also be aware of some new legislation, relatively new, that's aimed at really making the hub zone program a good tool for small business growth by expanding the number of hub zones. So this program is called the Governor Designated Covered Area Program, and it allows areas located outside of urbanized areas defined by census tract with a population of 50,000 or less and an average unemployment rate of 120% of the average unemployment rate for the US or for that state, whichever is the lowest, to be put in by the governor to SBA for approval as a special governor designated hub zone. So that is that's a tool that is out there again to make the hub zone program the best tool it can be and usable by more small businesses as we move forward. Next slide. All right. Any questions around hub zone?
We don't have any at the moment, but if we wanted to take a couple seconds and see if any come through, we can do that, or we can
let's
keep
do that.
moving. Okay.
And also to make sure that folks don't have questions about other material we've covered that, maybe they've realized they have.
Okay.
While we're kind of hanging out here for a minute, I do want to mention another sort of unintended consequence of the way the hub zone legislation was written that you should be aware of. So we talked about the idea that 35% of the hub zone firms' employees must live in a hub zone. So I want to give you an example. We also talked about the fact that hub zones are areas of high unemployment and low income. And oftentimes, university towns are considered to be hub zones because the student population brings them into that high unemployment, low income range that qualifies for a hub zone. So you could employ a University of Delaware student living in the Newark, Delaware hub zone that surrounds University of Delaware for 40 hours a month. And that employee would go towards qualifying your firm for hub zone status. So that's just, a little interesting fact that folks aren't aware of. Any other questions pop up, or are we good?
We did get some.
Okay.
The first question was where to go to get hub zone certified.
Okay. SBA.gov/hubzone.
Okay.
Okay. And sometimes things move around a little bit on our website. So, if you land there and that's not quite what you need, you can email me or Google SBA and HubZone, and you'll see where the HubZone application is located on SBA's website.
Thank you. And then another question was, I do not have a brick and mortar business. If your business has a registered agent, would you use that address as the HubZone address?
We call it your principal place of business. So, where most employees are working, where your tax papers would indicate that your business is primarily operating from. That's what we're looking at.
Thank you. And as for questions, I think that about wraps it up.
Okay. All right. So service disabled veteran owned small business. Now, as I mentioned, this program is going to come under SBA administration in January 2023. So I'm expecting that we'll see some changes around, what the application process is for the program at that point in time. But I do want to give you an overview of the program and its benefits. The federal government does aim to award at least 3% of all federal contracting dollars spent stateside to service disabled veteran owned small businesses each year. Now, to date, SDVOSB has been self-certifying with the exception of VA contracts and of course with the VA certifying disability. But January 2023, SBA is going to be administering the program and we will see some changes around it, I expect. So SDVOSB's certification does limit competition on federal contracts in set-aside and sole source scenarios. And that's what we've been talking about throughout these certification programs, that the federal government contracting officer, the buyer, can put out a contract for bid only for bid by businesses that have certain certifications. For example, SDVOSB certification. And that's what gives these certified firms a competitive edge in this federal government contracting marketplace. SDVOSB can be self-certified to compete for set-aside contracts at most federal agencies. However, as I mentioned, VA doesn't recognize SDVOSB certification, and SDVOSB contractors have to be verified by the Center for Verification and Evaluation over at VA. Now, this slide also mentions joint ventures as a benefit of this program. If a small firm lacks appropriate bonding capacity, it can enter into a joint venture with another small business that has that bonding capacity to allow it to bid on a particular contract. And should they win that contract and perform successfully, the small firm would now be in a better position to secure more bonding in future because it has proven itself on that contract. That's just an example of how a joint venture would work, coming together with another firm to take advantage of something maybe that other firm has that your firm does not. That's valuable for our businesses in these programs. Joint ventures, though, must be with another small business. Next slide. All right, so let's talk about the eligibility criteria. The eligibility is really similar to our other programs. The firm has to be at least 51% owned by a US citizen who's service disabled veteran. When an individual is discharged from military service, they receive a DD-214. That DD-214 has to note that the individual is at least 1% service disabled. And as part of the SDVOSB program, the VA certifies that disability, and the VA does that through their website. We also look at the management of the firm. As with the other certification programs we talked about today, managerial experience is required for SDVOSB certification. Next slide. So as we talked about, the contracting officer for the buying agency does market research to determine if a contract can be designated as a set-aside or a sole source opportunity. The SDVOSB program helps firms qualify for set-asides or sole source contract awards, and that, of course, helps the agencies meet those SDVO, SB contracting goals that Congress has set for them. It also facilitates development opportunities and increases growth potential. Those firms can go forward and establish joint ventures or mentor-protege agreements that help them be more competitive on these contracts. All right, next slide. Okay, so a couple of things I do want to mention before I open it again for questions. These certifications do, in fact, give firms a competitive advantage in the federal government marketplace. But it is key to understand that having the certification alone does not guarantee that you'll win federal government contracts. The most successful firms in the federal government contracting arena are the firms that market themselves to these buying agencies. And that's where a relationship with a PTAC is going to come in handy. You go to the PTAC, that was on one of my earlier slides, Dr. Walt Blaney here in Delaware, set up an appointment, and the PTAC will be able to help you identify which agencies actively buy what you sell to really target those marketing efforts. And when you're marketing to these federal agencies, you're definitely going to lead with your capabilities. You know, we talked about the idea that the federal government wants to safeguard those taxpayer dollars. They want to make sure that when they've entered into a contract, that firm is going to be able to perform on the contract. They're looking for a track record of performance. They're looking for a strong firm to contract with, and they're going to be looking at your capabilities first and foremost. And then secondarily, they're going to be interested in your certifications because they do have these goals by Congress to meet, to do business with small businesses that have these particular certifications. So self-marketing is absolutely key. I want to open it up and see if we have some more questions.
We currently don't have any questions. I don't know if we want to give everybody a couple minutes if they want to ask any more.
Sure.
Okay.
And I mentioned to Siobhan before we started, while we're, hopefully folks are coming up with some more questions for us. I wanted to mention, I know we've got a lot of small businesses on the line here today. SBA has an annual awards program where we look for businesses in categories like Small Business Person of the Year, Rural Business Champion, Minority-Owned Business of the Year, a variety of categories that we celebrate during Small Business Week in May. And so what we do here in Delaware is we open the nomination process up for those awards at this time of year. So right now, I want to let you know, if you visit our website, sba.gov/DE, there'll be information on how you can nominate businesses for these awards. We do press around the winners in the spring during Small Business Week, and the Small Business Person of the Year for Delaware competes for national recognition as the Small Business Person of the Year for the entire country. So these awards are essentially like SBA's Oscars. And the cool part that I want to convey to you is that it's become easier than ever to nominate for these awards. We accept self-nomination. That's something that folks aren't aware of. It's a quick and easy process, and it's a great way to sort of get acknowledged for the work that you're doing. And again, Small Business Person of the Year here in Delaware will compete for the national title. So it's an exciting opportunity. The nomination period ends though on December 8th. So visit our website, sba.gov/DE, to connect with the nomination process. And we do offer brief webinars every Tuesday between now and the end of the nomination period, now on December 8th, just talking about how to put together a winning nomination package, which is great to plug into. But I do hope that some of the folks here on this call today take advantage of that. Are there any other questions that have popped up?
We did get one. It says the SBA denies certification to disabled veteran-owned small business owners owned by those on probation or parole. Delaware has a ban on the box law. Will Delaware state also deny certification as the SBA does?
So is that a question for the state? Sounds like
It
I
sounds
think
like
so.
it. We don't have that question on our application, so no. That's not something that we ask as part of our certification application process.
Thank you. And I think that's it for questions.
okay.
I
Well, on
do want to,
behalf,
sorry, Jennifer,
oh,
I
I'm
just do want to plug in our vendor day training as a reminder to those of you who are interested in state contracting. Please, consider taking our vendor day training. Our next one is scheduled for January, and you could sign up for the OSD mailing list to get the registration information from there. It is a wealth of information, and I highly recommend that you all participate in the training.
all right. Well, I was just going to say on behalf of SBA, I definitely want to thank everyone for joining us, but I really want to thank the state of Delaware for providing this platform and just talking about all of our certifications and giving folks kind of a one and done place to get an overview of everything. So a huge thank you to everyone.
Oh, there was one more question that popped up. It just came through, or yeah, it just came through. Who is the VA contact in the state?
For
No.
certification, if you can email me at jennifer.pilcher@sba.gov, if you're wondering about certification issues, I can see what I can find for you. We're just really in a period of transition on that, as I said, because administration of it is moving over to SBA in just a few weeks. So, if you're interested during that interim period, email me and I will see what I can find out for you.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thanks, everyone.